My name is Peter Spear. I'm running for mayor. Figured I'd say that up front. This is the second in the Neighbors series of public conversations that I've been doing here. Thank you very much to Shannon for the space, to Carl for documenting it, and for Nicole Vidor for joining me, being my neighbor in conversation this week. Yeah, and the format is really, the intent is really simple, just to be in conversation in person around the city of Hudson. The format is Nicole and I will talk for an hour. I'll ask her a couple questions so we get to know her, and then she has questions that she's gathered from other people to ask me, to give myself a chance to think about Hudson and to share the ideas that I have. And then 30 minutes of Q&A if people want to ask questions. And then 30 minutes on the end to do kind of a town hall thing where there's no obligation for anybody to answer anything, then we can just listen. And we'll see how that goes. And we can structure that around a topic, or I don't know, we'll see how that goes. And then when we do that, we'll have a 3-minute limit on sharing. So I moved to Hudson in 2002. I was 30 years old, and you were definitely one of the first kind of people I feel like I ran into, but that you were here, and there was lots of people.
I moved here the same year.
Is that right? Wow, that's amazing. And I remember meeting you and Miles and my whole social world. There was all sort of, it was all wrapped up together. And so I was curious to know what it was like for you to come here and what it was like. Yeah, what brought you here, and how did you come to Hudson?
I had lived in Milan before and had a store in Rhinebeck called Workers and Dreamers. And Rhinebeck and I didn't work for me. And so I moved to Mexico for 10 years. And when I came back, I sure didn't want to live there. And I'd always been attracted to Hudson. And a long time ago, there used to be a store on Warren Street called Town Fair, where I used to go and buy toys for my kids. And that became Mark McDonald's shop with the big deco doors. And when I came into Hudson, Hudson was the most eccentric, eclectic, creative, exciting place I've ever stepped into. That's why I moved here.
Yeah.
But I do remember Peter had a store with 2 other guys. And they were kind of the only young straight guys available. So you can imagine what the scene was with all of the young women that lived here that were, anyway, it must have been quite a trip for you.
Maybe we should have prepared for this conversation up front.
But anyway, go on.
Yeah. I'm always curious about the name of that store, Workers and Dreamers. What was the inspiration for the name of your store?
Well, it's so interesting. I searched and searched, and it came to me driving up the Taconic Parkway. And then, like 5 years ago, I was reading this novel by Vida Sackville-West, who is a great friend of Virginia Woolf's. And she had in there Workers and Dreamers. And it shocked me. I thought it was mine, but I guess it was Vida's.
Yeah, well, I'm curious, what do you love about Hudson? What do you think makes Hudson so special?
I think it's kind of the same thing, that it's a very diverse and eccentric, less eccentric than it used to be, but it's just a very creative place, and like all places, and we all know it. It's sort of the creative people come in, they make it happen, and then the money follows, and then the creative people have to leave because they can no longer afford it. And then it becomes more sort of a retail town, kind of. I think, and I don't mean this negatively at all, but, with the first optical store, that was kind of a real turning point. It was a different kind. We never had those sort of, I don't know. Mm-hmm. And I love it for like this. I love that, people are trying to communicate and come together, and yeah, that's why I like it.
Yeah. And you've been doing real estate for a while, so you have a unique sort of perspective on the changes that have happened in Hudson, and you're sort of uniquely independent. And I know that just the way that that business has changed over the past bunch of years has been pretty dramatic. I wondered if you might sort of just share what that's been like and what the impact of that has been.
Well, the sad thing is we have a rule in Hudson that you cannot open a store if you have more than 4 stores. But somehow that rule doesn't apply to real estate.
Wow.
So when COVID happened, that was sort of the mother lode for all real estate people because it was off the charts. And every corporate office came into Hudson. So, one by one, the mom and pop stores are closing up because it's a mighty force. But we're still holding our own. We have a great reputation for, honesty and for, being a solid local team that know people and can really help new people come here. So that's how it's really changed. And so we don't have the same sort of cohesion and the same camaraderie that we once had in our business. It's gotten pretty cutthroat.
Yeah.
No.
Do you have, what are you hopeful about in Hudson? I was going to ask what are the challenges and all that stuff, but what's your sort of optimistic view?
Well, I would hope that if, when you're a mayor, and that you do have this, feeling about design and integrity and that we, really put our heads together to bring in people that are innovators, that really have great design sense, that work with affordable housing, and there are a lot of them, and create affordable housing here for all levels, because everybody needs it. Mm-hmm. People that own houses here, something has to begin to shift because the taxes and the utilities get so high that unless you're making a lot of money, it's a very challenging place to keep your house.
Yeah.
So I think that's the number one hope of mine, that we could all become more involved, and we could be more involved in education and in, I used to read to kids at the daycare, and that was a wonderful part of my life before I started the real estate, so then I couldn't do it. But if there's so many intelligent, talented people here, if we all started to kind of come together and share some of that and help other people, and community, I think would be my great hope.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I know that you gathered a bunch of questions.
Okay. Ready? In fact, I think this one you're kind of ready for because you almost did it on Instagram, but maybe people miss that. This is, maybe I won't say who they're from, but these are all questions from people who live in Hudson. What will you do in the first 100 days in office to make the city government more functional and efficient?
Yes. Yeah, I am prepared for that. And it's funny. I mean, I feel like, I very often talk in sort of big ideas, and I'm constantly getting feedback about trying to make things more tangible. And so, I have a very clear idea what I would do in the first 100 days. The first thing I would do, I would have to I would hire a grants coordinator to put at the center of all the coordination of the funding and the grant seeking, which is something I'm a little surprised that this administration really never did. Individuals seek grants sort of in a very ad hoc kind of way. But there's nobody there actively as a lever seeking the kind of revenue that the city needs to get things done. So I would do that. I would get like an administrative assistant, somebody who's very good at communicating, because I think the mayor's office and City Hall needs to communicate better, more consistently. I think there's a lot of problems in the planning board, and so I would invite a couple members who I don't think are acting in the best interest of the city of Hudson to step down, and I would invite new members onto the board who are fluent in the kinds of issues that we need in order to make the best kind of development decisions possible for the city of Hudson. I'm interested in bringing together all the various groups that work in parks. There's all these different friends of groups, and this has been the problem for a very long time. So I try to centralize all those various groups into a parks conservancy and hire somebody in the DPW who's able to liaison so that we can really coordinate the management of our public spaces. I think post-pandemic, using our public space as a place to come together is a real priority. I feel like we've underinvested and neglected our shared spaces for decades here in Hudson, and I think it hurts us. And so that would be a thing that I would do. I would initiate the People's Charter reform. I mean, that's a long-term change, but I would try to start it right away because I think I know for a fact we're running on a 100-year-old charter. I was talking to somebody the other day, an auction house, all the auction houses in Hudson, every month they have to print out a printed catalog of everything that they're auctioning, and they have to deliver it to City Hall because the city charter is from 1921 when the auction was on a block, and you couldn't, so it would be illegal for them not to deliver a hard copy of their business.
But no one looks at it, probably.
No, it's a zombie behavior that we're in because we're running on a 100-year-old charter. And we haven't legitimately looked at the zombie behaviors for 100 years. It's literally 106 years that we've made tweaks and revisions and things like that, but I think there's untold opportunities to increase the city's ability to do things for us simply by initiating a charter reform process. And I can go on at length about People's Charter reform, of course. I also would probably do I think it's time that we reassess the property values in the city of Hudson. I was talking earlier about that Mayor Johnson kind of came in 2019, which was the last time that we did a citywide reassessment. Rick Rector was doing it. And of course, reassessments, they kick up a lot of anxiety. And so there was a lot of people who were really upset. And that created the conditions for Kamal to really kind of win. And Mayor Rector also at that time had initiated a process of looking at the budget because we run on the structural deficit. So we could keep coming to this situation where we need to reevaluate, we need to reassess, and we need to look at our budget. And so we're kind of in a little bit of a deja vu moment right now. And so I would reassess, do a citywide revaluation of the properties so that everybody is paying their fair share and that we kind of know where we are. I have notes. I'm going to look at my notes.
I would just like to comment on the reassessment.
Yeah.
Because when it was done, when Rick Rector did it, it was a very terribly unfair.
Yes.
And so if that repeats itself, it would be disastrous for a lot of people.
Yeah, I would qualify it by doing, hiring a reputable firm. And I think also we need to standardize it. I think it's crazy that we leave this to be a political decision. I think other municipalities, they schedule it. There's ways of just getting on a schedule to avoid the kind of the political nature of it. I mean, our current mayor has just kicked it down the road. I mean, you're supposed to do it every 4 years. 2019 was the last time we did it. We're overdue. Because I think he just has a hard time doing things that aren't popular. I would engage a city planner for the planning board. I would probably get rid of the lawyers. I would get new lawyers, and I would get a planning consultant for the city on retainer or fractional in some way. I don't think we have the budget for like a full position, but we need the expertise of a planner on every significant development decision that we have. I think it's sort of criminal that the planning board operates now without the insight of a planning consultant. They have a lawyer and they have an engineer. And so every development decision that they look at, I'm sorry, I'm going all over the place a little bit, ends up sort of they're determining whether it's legal and safe. But there's no question there's no opportunity for a conversation about, does this fit our vision? Does this create a great experience for our neighbors? Does this fit into the grid? There's none of those questions. It's impossible to have that kind of conversation without a planner present in the planning board. And then also, because my commitment to the public space, I would try to really identify some quick fixes. We know the intersections that are horrible. I think I really want to make some material improvements to the spaces that we share, and so I would try to make some quick fixes to intersections that are bad. trash cans upgrades, little park upgrades, some kind of, try to make a difference there. And I know with a grant coordinator, we'd be able to get money to do a citywide kind of pedestrian plan too, to try to organize the way that the lights and traffic and everything work, to try to bring all that up. I think that's enough. I don't want to be looking at my notes either.
Okay. I asked I was in a shop yesterday and I asked a woman who's lived here all of her life if she had a question. And she said, yeah, I do. She said, please ask him, how do you plan to involve yourself in the community and how will you bring the entire Hudson community together?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, I feel like it's at the heart of everything I feel like I've done. I mean, Future Hudson came out of a desire to help us have a conversation with ourselves, which is me quoting this guy, Matthew Frederick, who was an urban designer who did a presentation at the library called Future Hudson. And it was the first time, and he literally sketched alternate designs onto the cityscape. And I had never seen creativity really just applied directly to Hudson problems. And a real light bulb went off in my head. And I remember talking to him and he said, he had tried to engage and he said, Hudson doesn't know how to have a conversation with itself. And I quote him all the time because we're sort of filthy with creative talent here in Hudson, and yet it seems unreasonably difficult for the city itself to be creative. So I think we're in the middle of, or at the beginning of some kind of civic renewal. Like I feel like we are coming out of the pandemic. I feel like I have been asleep. The last couple of elections were completely uncontested. And there's a waking up that's happening, and I'm connected with people around the country that are really thinking deeply about the impact of social media on public discourse, how toxic that all is, and that we really need to sort of overcommit into sort of physical public meetings and civic engagement. So, I mean, one of the first things, it's on my list actually, that I didn't indicate in the first 100 days is really set a schedule of regular in-person town hall meetings and forums. So there's a calendar and a rhythm of coming together around the city and in the city and moving it around and trying to create new ways for all of us to come together around the questions that we have.
Yeah, and I think, for instance, I have a business, and a lot of us have businesses in town, and the current mayor has never come to see anybody in their businesses.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, that the mayor has a relationship with actually what's driving the revenue of the city.
Yeah.
He's never been in my business. Never saw him in my business.
Right. There you go.
Yeah, and I heard that, up and down Warren Street, and
so many people have told me they don't even know how he looks like.
Yeah, and that's outrageous. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's also, it sets up this relationship between City Hall and and the businesses that really drive the economy. That's adversarial. It's really unnecessary and it's divisive. And certainly, I feel like there's this tension in Hudson. I always think it's oversimplifying, but that we have this sort of creative economy in Hudson, which is the businesses in Warren Street and tourism and hospitality. And then we have this caring economy because we are a small town that has big city problems. Like we have people that need our help. But somehow these things are at war with each other all the time. But they don't need to be at war. And somehow if we can bring them together so that they're connected. You know what I mean? That if we compete better as a tourist destination, as a hospitality destination, and we try to grow that puts us in a better position to help people that need help. And then the way that we help people makes a difference here too. And I think that's why a lot of the housing development thinking is just, it's counterproductive, because it's working against what's driving the economy, and that these things can work together is my hope and my vision to try to bring those together.
I think Peter and I were talking the other day, and I was saying, it'd be so great if also we could create other ways for people who live here who have great talents but could never afford the rent of a retail space in Hudson. So if we had in Mexico they have mercados where, you know, you pay for a table, or it's like Portobello Road. You pay for a table, and then you get, you know, so maybe we have an outdoor market that's every Saturday. Or if we could hook up people, if we had a kitchen, an approved kitchen, then people could come and make sandwiches there and walk up and down the street and sell them, and we'd all buy them. You know, so I think there are all sorts of ways to bring I think that's a big problem here, because all the businesses, you have to have a certain amount of money to have a business here. But there are a lot of people that could sell great things if there was another vehicle for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important.
Yep. I think there's a little bit of a planning story that can happen there too, that somehow the zoning doesn't allow you
Right.
to open businesses. The commercial corridor is only on Warren Street, but with
Right.
form-based code, we can open it up. And I know that one of my neighbors, Basil, who was a city employee for a long time, wanted to open a restaurant, but because it's a, whatever, I always forget this language, but he struggled for years to get a restaurant open because it wasn't something use. You know what I mean? So there's ways that we can, I think the comprehensive plan makes this recommendation so businesses could open off of Warren Street. So there'd create more opportunities
Yeah,
for entrepreneurs
definitely.
to open up.
Definitely. Thank you. Okay, so my next question, I'm just going to preface this by reading this. In political science, idealism describes a political approach prioritizing moral and ethical principles such as justice, equality, human rights, and the common good over pragmatic concerns or the pursuit of power. The question is, what do you say to your critics who call you an idealist as though it were a dirty word?
I would say that that's such a great question. What I think, I say thank you very much. I mean, absolutely right. You're 100% correctly. I would say I think that the idealism is strategic and it's intentional, and it's that I think we need it in a way, and that I know that I feel like my experience in Hudson is that we keep having the same conversation over and over and over again. And we are caught in a real loop, and we've sort of fallen out of thinking that we can have anything different than what we have.
Imagine if the planning board was made up of all idealists. What a beautiful city we would have.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, so I think, I mean, if I'm doing anything, if the scariest thing I feel like I'm doing is trying to have a big idea in front of everybody else about something beautiful. And that's exactly the case. And I mean, if that's not interesting, I think it creates possibilities that we don't currently have access to. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I feel maybe it's sort of like, you know, get on board or get out of the way a little bit, honestly.
There you go. Some pretty rough talk from the mayor-to-be. Okay. The next question I think I will ask you. What is your vision for the future of Hudson's waterfront?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah. What is the vision of your vision for the Hudson waterfront?
Yeah. I don't know that I have a particular, I'm not in possession of a particular vision for the future of the waterfront. I do feel strongly that, I mean, I come to this idea of like a thriving coexistence, that we are, for the longest time, while I lived in Hudson, the issue of the waterfront, from my experience, was really gate-kept by people who made it feel like a very us versus them binary issue, and it was either you got to get industry off the waterfront, or then we were locked in this sort of gridlock. I think we're in this opportunity space where the planning board has the authority to regulate the conditions and to create really great conditions for us to develop the waterfront in whatever way we see fit. And I really, you know, I stand alongside, you know, people who have invested a lot of time and heart and energy down there, and that we need to create the opportunity for them to do what they want to do. And we already have a beautiful plan a resilient plan for the waterfront, that I think that design is pretty sweet. Yeah, and I think that we're really just going to have a lot of difficult conversations about coming together and coexisting between the state boat launch and the Powerboat Association and the waterfront. I think we're going to have some real conversations. I think it's exciting. Actually, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, last week, about that Hudson's sort of a river town that sort of course we know this to be true, is disconnected from the river. But there's sort of beautiful opportunities to really develop like pretty ambitious maritime, ideas down there. There's a sort of a wasted opportunity to really access the river, to bring the river to life, to sort of really take hold of the idea of us as a river town. So I'm curious about developing a vision, again, that's idealistic, to create an opportunity for us to think differently about what can happen down there. But again, we're going to have to figure it out together. And this is where I think this commitment to trying to invest in community engagement and create strong spaces where we're able to have a conversation and we come together more often, they'll allow us to, to have a space where we can try to work through those kinds of issues.
Well, maybe this is a good question. I was at the planning board meeting the other night, and somebody was there to propose their hotel on Lower Warren Street, and that seemed fine. But then they did one of those traffic studies, a traffic study. And the traffic study was done on a Wednesday afternoon, and they found 128 places. I live down there, and I know there aren't any places. And a woman who has lived here all of her life got really angry. It was also the Shiloh Baptist Church is her church. And she was like, you're not taking our parking places. And I think it's a real challenge, and I think the whole thing of these parking studies is about as bogus as anything can be. And so I wonder what you think about that, about parking and about residents and about...
Yeah, well, we love our cars, and I feel like parking is obviously a giant issue. There's so many different ways to talk about this topic and this question. I think maybe the first thing I would say is that the way the city has currently been approaching this, with the kiosks and everything, is really just an example of, it's just more evidence that we need to reform the city government. We need a planning capacity in the city to make these kinds of decisions. It's sort of outrageous. I have a lot of compassion for Jennifer Belton, who did a lot of really wonderful work trying to make that happen, but it was sort of a catastrophe, sort of a system breakdown, you know what I mean? That developing a parking strategy for the entire city of Hudson falls into the lap of a single alderperson who is it's outrageous that we would be making decisions this way. So we're kind of all at fault, I think, in some way that we've allowed this to happen. So I go on to distribute some responsibility there as opposed to sort of pointing any fingers. So I think we need a planner to think smartly about how to approach parking. I have two probably observations on it. I mean, I think the first thing the city should do is sort of protect people's relationship with their car. So I think having a permit strategy is probably the first thing for the city to do, just to say, hey, you know what? You're a taxpayer. You're our primary responsibility. And I think just demonstrating a commitment to serve the resident first, just out the gate, probably would have been the better thing to do, just to sort of so that's the one thing I would do. And then I think that there is a need maybe to talk about increasing capacity significantly, whether that's down by the waterfront or somewhere else, to really just build a garage or something, because we need a solution. We need some kind of long-term solution. So those are my thoughts on that. And then again, I feel like it speaks to the gap, what I call the planning gap, that there's nobody embedded in the city who can see that parking study and go, we have our own parking study, or we know how to interpret this study. This is the official position of the city of Hudson, that we actually have this is what we think our need is, and this is what you're telling, so you can't tell us what our need is. now I'm getting around to the actual point, is that this is how Hudson has been developing. Developers tell us stuff. Right. The planning board was just incapable of asserting its own point of view, and so things happen to Hudson as opposed to Hudson making things happen. And I think, filling the planning gap is sort of the how we make that happen.
It's so interesting, right? Because so many of these questions come back to a city planner. So much comes back to the fact that we don't have a plan.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Hudson seems to have a chronic financial management problem. And it's reported that we are in debt for $1 million. How can you get our financial house in order?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is that deja vu a little bit, that the city runs a structural deficit. I always tell the story of the bumblebee. I remember being told that scientists had proven that bumblebees can't fly because the physics of their wings and their body doesn't add up. Their wings shouldn't be able to support the body. So there's something impossible about bumblebees. And there's something also equally, sort of similarly impossible about Hudson, that we're 2 square miles, which is very small, and 40 to 50% of our land is untaxed. And so we're running a full city on half tax revenue, and costs keep going up, and we just keep cycling. We keep running this cycle. And in 2019, the same thing was happening. You know what I mean? We were hitting a budget crunch. We hadn't done an assessment in a long time. And that's where we are now. We've been plugging the gap. And it depends on who you talk to, whether the gap's $800,000 or $1 million, but we keep running it. So what I would do is, I think the first thing I would do, because I think everything starts with a shared understanding, is have some sort of town hall about the state of the budget. So create just an honest conversation about where we're at, identify the gap and the hole, and the only solution I can come up with is just ask all the departments to sort of take responsibility for their share and cut it down, cut the spending down. What I really want to avoid, and this is what happened, in 2018, was when Rick Rector was trying to have a conversation about the budget. And the thing that happens in Hudson when you talk about cutting things, the youth department, youth center ends up, it just becomes like the sacrificial service. It just appears as the thing that everybody decides we can't deal with. And there's perfectly rational arguments to get rid of it. But it's totally unnecessary to have that conversation.
It's also extraordinarily valuable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But so we end up without it, and this is why idealism is important, I think, because without an idealistic North Star, which is to make Hudson the best place to grow up in the Hudson Valley, it's perfectly rational to slash the youth center. And so what I want to do is avoid this sort of the sacrifice of the youth center, this sort of I keep forgetting the book about the kids on the island, Lord of the Flies, this sort of Lord of the Flies that happens around the budget, and distribute the responsibility. So that's what I would do. I would just, we got to do the reassessment. I would have, so there's 2. In the short term, cut the spending, have everybody cut their spending so we can get responsible, and limit how much we're spending. And then I really want to develop an economic development plan to grow the city of Hudson, and to have a vision to grow the tax base so that we're making more money, we're bringing more money in. So that's the short term and the long term. I'm probably forgetting something there, so I'm going to cheat. Yeah, and then there's little things I forgot. I mean, we can collect the back taxes. We have a vacancy tax that we don't enforce. We have lodging taxes that are probably not enforced. And then I think the grants coordinator will help us manage the borrowing, because I think that's a bunch of the gap is just we're involved in a lot of borrowing that's leaving us in the lurch. But it looks good on paper, but we're really struggle. And I want to just call out too that that I met with the treasurer, I think, in January, after I had announced, just to get a sense of what's going on. And she was very clear, you know what I mean? And if you watch all the old meetings, the finance committee meetings or the budget meetings, she would constantly use the word aggressive to describe that the way that the mayor and the common council president would budget. She was constantly sort of giving these little red flags. And then when Rich Volo, who's one of our longest serving people on the common council, the chair of the finance committee, asks a question about, are we okay? Maybe he shouldn't have used the word bankruptcy, but he raised an alarm about it. The mayor got on Facebook and sort of demanded that he step down. You know what I mean?
Gee, that sounds like a familiar
right?
person does that.
Right. Right. And then never actually followed up with any kind of effort, not a single effort, to try to communicate any information to residents of the city of Hudson about the reality of the budget. I mean, it's an absolute failure of leadership. I mean, it's just outrageous, really. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I would want to communicate about it. Now I've lost the thread on that question.
Okay. Do you want me to keep asking you questions? Do we have time?
Yeah.
Okay. You have mentioned Hudson's growth to 10,000. Where will the new housing be built and who will design it?
Yeah. Well, so I had a conversation, had coffee with Rick Scalera, the ex-mayor, and had a long conversation with him, and sort of in passing he indicated that when people complain about new housing being a tax or being a burden on the infrastructure, he said, well, it's fine because the infrastructure is built to 10,000. And so I took that to mean that there's opportunity for growth confidently. And growth is a solution. It seems to be the only real solution to some of our financial problems, necessary to broaden the economy so that we can invite people to live here and we can have a resilient economy. And so I set the 10,000 target just based on that. I'm working with a friend of mine who we're very lucky to have in Hudson, this guy Mark Morgan Perez, who works for housing in New York City. He just took a job, I think, as the head of housing in Long Island. And I want to visualize 10,000, so what it would look like. What it would look like to grow. Because I think, and this is true everywhere, is that when new developments are proposed near you, it's uncomfortable. And people don't like that kind of change. And so part of our responsibility is to help us change and help us accept new developments into our community. And so part of what I want to do is really visualize it, and so that we can imagine what it might be like to be a city with more people, with more neighbors, and also to reassure ourselves maybe that we can do it in a way that's beautiful, and that follows principles that respect the grid, that keep the scale, that make it feel the way that it feels. So that's why the 10,000 is there as a number, but 10,000 is really just a way of, just a way of bringing it to life, to try to visualize it.
It's interesting when Peter speaks, about beautiful, and when the depot lofts were having their meeting, presenting in front of the historic board. I happened to be on that call, and the one architect who was on the board said to everybody, look, this is like the biggest development that we're going to have in a very long time in Hudson, so let's really pay attention to the materials and the design, because it's important, and it's important to the people that live there. And everybody else basically was, get off it. It's low-income housing. So this, yeah, exactly. So, and that sort of, I feel, has been sort of the philosophy of the housing that is coming into Hudson. And I know that we can do so much better, and I feel even more so that people that don't have the money to, have their stainless steel kitchens, I can live in beautiful places. And you can do that. That is very possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's beautifully said. I remember I had a conversation with somebody, and this really has been, I think this gets a little bit to the tension we talked about before between sort of the culture of care that happens in Hudson and the culture of sort of commerce or creativity in Hudson, that these things are against each other when they don't really need to be. And there's, the way that development gets framed in Hudson, it becomes, there's this moral urgency to it that says that we just need housing at all costs.
Right.
It just does not matter. It doesn't really matter. Anything other than just capacity is some sort of moral failure. And that's just wildly unhelpful. And I think it does, in the developments we've seen are not good developments. But we're told that we have to accept them because the need is so high. But I don't think that's the case. And I remember one conversation somebody said to me, housing is a human right, which is this sort of moral assertion that any housing in Hudson, of course, is absolutely necessary. And so our only response is to accept it. And it occurred to me that I feel like beauty is a human right, and I can make an equally strident moral assertion about beauty and housing, and that we should try to do both. And again, right, we should, I think also, I feel like this is the great opportunity to actually solve these problems in a way that is uniquely Hudson. And if we don't actually try to solve it in a way that is true to who we are and what we care about, then we're equally, we're sort of failing just as much.
Absolutely. Okay.
Got one?
Why Peter Spear?
Oh.
What do you bring to Hudson at this moment that we need the most?
I've been here a long time, I think. So I think of two things. One, I think of relationships, and the second thing, I think of listening. Like, I feel like I feel like relationships are important, and knowing Hudson the way that I know Hudson is significant, and I feel like I understand Hudson in a way, and I feel like I've demonstrated that. You know, that you can look at my Instagram. You got like 7 years, I think, or maybe even more of me sort of thinking out loud about my values and stuff in Hudson. So I think I have a unique perspective on Hudson and an understanding of it. And then I think I'm 100% committed to listening and to the idea that everything starts with a shared understanding, and that it's important that we kind of hear each other. And this is maybe more idealism, but yeah, that I want to create opportunities for us to develop a shared understanding so that we can make the kind of creative decisions that we need to make in order to deal with the problems that we have now and then thrive in the long term. And also, because I'm saying I want to make Hudson the best place to grow up in the Hudson Valley. And as far as I know, I haven't really heard any kind of particular vision from anybody else that matches that.
Great. Hudson is a walkable city, and yet one is often in danger of being hit by speeding cars and drivers who do not believe that pedestrians have the right of way. You did a great piece on that.
Yeah.
Would you, as mayor and part of a citizens' assembly, reinvigorate the Hudson Shared Streets program and/or implement safer crosswalks and enforce speed limits?
Yes, all of those things. I agree. So I think Hudson is a city that has been designed for trucks, 100%. Trucks over people for the last 50 years. And it's in the design of the light that controls the intersection of 3rd and Warren Street. The light actually has long shields to increase visibility for truck drivers that make it impossible for a pedestrian on the corner to actually see the light.
Oh, interesting.
So the actual, our built environment is designed for trucks, not people. And that's 100% top priority, is to make it so Hudson is designed for people first, for children first. And this is the beauty of making Hudson the best place to grow up in the Hudson Valley, is that when you design, and this is a complete streets principle, when you design an intersection for the most vulnerable user, it makes it safe for everybody. And so that would be a principle that I would implement across the board. and also because I'm committed to the idea of connecting in real time in public space and using the streets creatively and investing in parks. I would want to bring back the outdoor dining, which was a big part of the shared streets, and I think some restaurants had a lot of success with it. So I would really want to see if we could do that again, because I think it brings a lot of energy to Hudson. And then also I think, yeah, I want to make block parties. I want to make gathering in public spaces something that we do on the regular and to make it easy to do. I would love to have a summer walk to just balance off Winter's Walk. I think that experience of being, this was something that happened, this is a total confession. I remember for years Winter's Walk would happen, and I would walk it, and the whole time I'd be like, what am I doing? What is this? And why do I like it? And it was only then I realized, like after the fact, that it was like, because there were no cars on the street, and I was in some proper relationship with the street and with the buildings and with people, and it was totally unique. And it was one time a year, and it's just it's so beautiful. And so that experience also is just trying to create more of that experience where we're all together in the street, sort of in a proper relationship to the buildings. Seems like, again, it's just a beautiful thing to try to create more. I understand that I've friends who own restaurants and stuff, and they don't like, shutting it down, so we have to find a way where it works for everybody.
I think it's interesting to make Hudson the best place for a kid to grow up. Then I think the Hudson youth is even more important. And I also feel that it would be so great if that could be opened up so that other kids, even kids that go to Hawthorne Valley or whatever, that everybody wants to be part of that. Because if we can bring the kids together, and enrich their lives, then it's a no-brainer what follows.
That's right.
Do you want to go on?
I've got one, actually.
Okay.
Somebody asked, how do we remove trucks if it is not a priority to Greenport and New York State? I don't know that I have a really good answer to that question, other than to say making it a priority, like I said. And I think organizing the city's sort of economic development around this becoming the best place to grow up in the Hudson Valley, and just pursuing it. I had one conversation. Somebody indicated, because it's Greenport and Colarusso is a Greenport company, that there's a little bit of this sort of this connection between how willing Greenport is to take our trucks is somehow dependent upon how the city of Hudson treats Colarusso and the planning board. And so, I mean, I can't draw a conclusion to that other than to say that it's absolutely possible to have a conversation with Greenport about moving the trucks, and I would make it a priority. And I think it's completely doable, even if it takes a while. And I've talked to other people who are willing to join me in that fight about getting them off the streets.
I think Margaret's done a lot in that department.
That's right. Yeah, we've got it. She did amazing work getting it off of, 9G, and now it's just trying to get it out of here. So. All right.
Maybe we'd like to open it up.
Does anybody have questions? We'll do like a little bit of Q&A, and then if people want to do a town hall where they speak without any need to answer.
I have a question regarding the FARC, because I heard that 2 years ago they had the FARC had a $500,000 budget to redo it, but nothing's been done. So where is this money, and why is nothing being done? Yeah,
I met with the Friends of the Public Square, who, one thing to say about this, number one, is that all of that work is volunteer work. This Friends of the Public Square are people who sort of organize together to get permission from the city to develop a plan, and then they've developed a plan and the design. It's a quite admirable effort. I just want to sort of point that out. I often feel like in Hudson, the state can get things done, and residents can get things done. The city very rarely gets things done. So to your question, it's in process. It's getting a lot of attention up the food chain in the state to try to get funding. And I think somebody else in the room might know more than I, but it's very near completion. Not completion, but it's getting...
What is near completion?
they're seeking funding.
So the funding was already allotted to this project.
No, not for, again, I don't remember the specifics, but not enough funding. Yeah.
So they need more than $500,000.
Yes.
They need three
$3 million?
for what they're proposing.
Yeah. Thank you, Lloyd. Yeah. And there's like Josh Riley, it's going up the food chain, and people in positions of power recognize it as a need and as a good idea, and everything's in order, and it's just a matter of getting in front of the right people and the money happening, unlocking and coming down. But everything, as far as the conversations I've had, things are moving along as they should. And so it'll be happening.
I believe they got $1 million.
I wish I could.
And they have to, and the city has to kind of in-kind contribution with the work to get the $1 million. So the DPW is probably going to start doing the work, and then they'll get the $1 million reimbursement, which the city always seems to be getting reimbursed. So that's the thing with the grants. We're waiting for the grant money, and that's why we have bond issues, and it's like, I think it's way more than $1 million. I think it's 7.5 in bonds. I mean, I think we need to look at the bonds.
Hold on. Let's stay on. Thank you, Lloyd. Maureen, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
I'll get more specifics and get to you. I wish I had more specifics for you. But all the indications are that things are moving ahead.
Is there like a plan of what they want to develop in the park that is available for us to look at?
Yeah, I think so, absolutely. Yeah.
And where's that?
Probably on the city website somewhere. I don't know, actually. I'll find that too. Yeah. Nice. Tanya.
Huh? Taxes are my favorite issue.
Yeah.
I was
Taxes.
I'd love to know how you think it's possible to make it more equitable here in Hudson. I pay $24,000 a year in taxes
Yeah.
because I bought here in 2022. And across the street, Galvin has a building that's 30% larger, paying 50% of the tax that I pay.
And some people don't pay taxes.
And Spark of Hudson, which just got started, spent $1 million to buy their building, I think 2.5 to renovate it. They have 9,000 square feet. They pay the same that I pay, and I have 3,000 square feet. I'm a single mom. Like,
Yeah.
what the f?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I mentioned earlier, I mean, one of the first things I would do in getting into office is to do a total reassessment and really make sure that everybody's paying their fair share. We're long overdue for, a total reval of the city.
I think that another thing that should be looked at is grievance day. Grievance day isn't even advertised. So if it's only one day, we have one day. It's like you have one day to get rid of your toxic materials. You have one day of the entire year to grieve your taxes. And the only people that ever win are people with lawyers.
Right.
And the people,
As much as they say.
yeah, and so I had neighbors that I love very much that lived next door to me on Allen Street and had been there for 60 years. No one had ever been inside their house. So, and they assessed them at $745,000. So then when these guys, they had to move because there was no way they could pay the taxes. I went to the mayor on their behalf and I said, this isn't right. And he said, no, but I can't, it happens every day. That's all I can tell you. And so I agree with you, the assessments, anyway, they ended up selling their house for $500,000 because it was a wreck. There was no way that house was even worth that, actually, right? I mean, it was really, no one had worked on it for 60 years. But that's the great unfairness of this whole thing, of these assessments, and that they happen at any time. That's the other thing that's really bizarre.
Yeah, no, and I'm not as fluent on the issue as I would like to be, but I know that that making taxes fair, doing the hard work of total reassessment of properties across the city is a necessary thing to do, and that the way that we do it now is not adequate. And so I'm committed to that. Yeah. Hi.
Hi, I'm Jennifer. I own a property in New York City, and the property tax thing is very hard for most people to handle. I just had the woman at Trusco notarize some TC 159 that I needed to send to the lawyer, and without a lawyer, I mean, every building owner in New York City uses a lawyer to challenge the property tax assessment every year. And then they go to in August. And one time I came back from being at some hot springs in Colorado to attend and in August, and it was like they'd never seen a human being show up other than the lawyers. You know, but I'm like, all around me, all these developers have, you know, tax abatements for 30 years because they doing new development, and it's being offset on, you know, people who own older buildings that, you know, so that they can make up the difference. And same thing, you know, new condos, they, you know, end up getting hit when if they do a rent stabilization and devalue other buildings, it gets very complicated. But this state mandates certain property tax classes, and you wouldn't know that if you own a house that you haven't left in 60 years. But there's a protected property class for you know, owner-occupied single family, and if you live there for 60 years, because I said that to my lawyer, how come I saw this building that is for sale and the property taxes are $300 and mine are $103,000? And he's like, because they probably didn't sell the building in so many years, and if you're a protected property tax class, there's a constraint that the city can't increase your property tax. It's not a matter of the assessment, but they can't do more than 30% every 5 years. And 30% of $300 doesn't turn out to be a big, you know, change. So I don't have a question, and that wasn't what I was planning to comment. I really want to comment on, you know, what seems, we don't know each other, but, you know, I really appreciate the integrity you seem to come to wanting to grow and govern this small city. I sat on a rezoning task force, a community board rezoning task force for 4 years in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. And I haven't revisited that in a long time, but coming to the last meeting kind of churned that, and I met Mark, the planner, and I've been to Albany about certain things, and so kind of stimulated my thinking. And there's just, these are complicated. It's very important to have the conversations and to have people heard and to take their things into consideration. And yet what you also point out is that initially everybody resists change, and they're not going to be happy, and it's going to be, you know, really offloaded on you. But for example, we all might think, oh, that poor guy should have been able to open a restaurant where he wanted to open a restaurant, but it wasn't zoned for a restaurant. And there's all these unintended consequences of what you think doing the right thing is. And like if it were on Allen Street and they were trucks delivering, you know, food from the big companies that service all the restaurants, then the residents would end up, that's why they're zoning, because you don't want a nightclub where you live, and you don't want trucks delivering fish where people live, because they're going to complain. But I would, you know, emotionally agree with you, like this guy wanted to open a restaurant and some technicality stood in his way. So city governance, and you seem to be coming at it with both heart and intellect. Like, it requires economic development experts, and it requires city planning experts. And this is a small town, so it seems a little more manageable than New York City. But anyway, for you voters and raves, you know, you're really coming at it, it seems, from a a good place. It's not a question so much, but I guess other question might be, which is idealistic perhaps. I haven't heard from your opposition. I haven't heard anything from your opposition, but it seems like a three-way race. Am I correct? Are there only...
There are four candidates, four people running for mayor. Lloyd being one of them over there. And myself and Kamal is running on the Working Families line, and Joe Ferris is on the Democratic line. Thank you for everything you just said. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for everything you just said. I appreciate it very much.
I mean, in New York City, you know, we're facing this three-way thing.
Do you have a question? I want to share the...
The question was, my daughter went to a progressive charter school, and the concept was there were 2 teachers in every room, and there were 2 leaders, and it was about working together. And you talk about working together, and, you know, could you envision working with one of your opponents as a co-director that has do you have similarities as opposed to differences that could end up being a collaborative thing?
I feel like the Brad Lander, Mamdani experience in New York City has set a whole range of unrealistic expectations into motion. But that might be my competitive spirit.
You feel like the Mamdani?
What's that?
You feel like the Mamdani here?
I mean, I think the People's Charter reform is a radical idea that can transform local government and do a good thing in a way at a similar scale to some of the things that he's proposing, 100%. I saw some, oh, Mark.
Changing the subject, last month when we did this, there were some critical questions about your citizens assembly chart that where you said you would have a group of citizens come and they would meet and they would get education about certain things in the city, and then I guess they would act as a kind of planning board within that capacity. Am I right? Is that kind of summing up how the citizens assembly would work?
Generally.
Okay. The one thing I thought we never got an answer to was there was criticism in the audience saying, well, it sounds like, you know, jury duty. Like, would people want to show up? Is this something that might shoot itself in the foot by being just more work and more rules? I wonder if you talk positively about that.
Yeah, it's funny because it is true. So the Citizens Assembly, the People's Charter reform would reform the city charter through a citizens assembly, and a citizens assembly works like a jury, and it's a different way of doing democracy, and it's different in 2 ways. The first way is who is in the room, and the way that the participants is chosen is similar to a jury. It's called sortition, so it's random. It's a randomly selected, they call it a lottery, of residents who are, you can design it, and so often it's called a mini public. So you can design it to be truly representative of any layer of diversity that you want to be included. So it becomes a mini public. And then that's one of the biggest differences. And then the second difference is that it creates this long time. What happens in the room is education and deliberation over a period of time amongst all these people to come to a kind of a rough consensus. Well, this guy wrote a book about deliberative democracy, and it's the deliberate which is the important part. And I always just like the title. He just calls it Democracy When the People Are Thinking. And so it's about public judgment, not public opinion. So that's Citizens Assembly. We know it. It operates right now in jury duty. People's lives are determined by the operation of a jury. Juries work, and and we use them to make very difficult decisions all the time. And so it's not an unproven thing. You know what I mean? We're just sort of taking it from one context and putting it into another. And the idea that people don't want to do jury duty, this is maybe a little bit of the idealism. I feel like we have to do something different. You know what I mean? And I think this is the movement for deliberative democracy comes from a place of feeling like we've been trained to flip a switch every 4 years or every 2 years. And that's the only thing that we really have to do as a citizen or as a voter. We vote, and then we sit back and we judge and evaluate, and we end up disappointed, and then we go back and forth, and it's just swinging back and forth. I mean, we're caught in a loop. It's like a death spiral. And so I think the idea that we need, that we can create a new way of participating in democracy, a new way of being a citizen or being a resident or a voter, I think that's that's the really idealistic thing. And I tell this story all the time too, is that my daughter's 9, 8, almost 9, and so in 10, 11 years, she's gonna be voter age. There's a possibility with People's Charter reform that when she registered to vote, her name would be put in a lottery, and that every 4 years, the city of Hudson would have a resident lottery where the community decides what's the most intractable challenge that we have, that we want to assign to the resident assembly, and she would sit in a room of 20 neighbors of all ages, truly a mini public of Hudson, and people would listen to her. What?
And do they get paid?
Yeah, they get paid, childcare, everything, it's all included.
But how often would they have to go to that room? Like, what is
So
that
the People's Charter reform is 5 to 6 days over 3 months. And they come out on the other end with either a whole new charter or a whole bunch of recommendations. But it's custom. So let's say for a Hudson resident assembly, maybe it's like 2 or 3 afternoons over a month or something. So, but it's scaled back. It's to be determined.
That
Yeah.
sounds reasonable.
Yeah. And also there's something in us that wants to do good things. You know what I mean? For the community. And I think that we can call that out of people. If it's in the name of the place that we love, and it's about, imagine if we had a citizens' assembly on the waterfront. Do you know what I mean? We love the waterfront. Imagine there was a provocation and an opportunity to make a decision about the waterfront, and we actually just put it in a table in front of a residents. I feel like I think we would all probably take that very seriously and not treat it. I think it's very popular to complain about jury duty, of course, but yeah. Hugo.
Peter, thank you for doing this. First, applaud your focus on finding the money. And to add to your, I think, very healthy list is there's more than $200,000 I've heard of outstanding parking tickets. So these are folks who just drive into Hudson, get a ticket, don't know how to pay it. We only send them one notice. So if I'm from Illinois and I drove here for Thanksgiving, the ticket's not going to find me. It's now at $40. And that's all out there, right? So there are many examples like that where we could find money literally on trees, at least once, stop year after year, and pay for the things we need, right? And that's the first thing. Second thing is there is a block party right now. It's the Hudson Farmers Neighborhood Block Party. Yeah. And I'm sure you scheduled this before knowing about that. I also didn't know about that, but Joe Ferris and Kamal is there right now. So not to sort of knock you, but they are block parties. It's more of a communication and coordination problem, which a mayor is well suited to fix, right?
Yeah.
And then third is on the citizen assembly. We'd love to at some point have a larger conversation about that, because I love that you put that in the public sphere. The one difference with jury duty, from my perspective, and there might not be a perfect answer, I'm asking you to answer this, but juries do not have outside experts and moderators by design. They're held excommunicado for weeks if they have to be, and there's a guy with a gun outside the door making sure that no one influences them, right? And the judge can't tell them what to think, just what the rules are. And so that's not a knock against citizen assembly. It just means that whoever is the expert moderator, it makes a massive difference. Now, I might trust you, Peter, as a sort of urbanist and a dad and a 20-year resident of Hudson, to be a good guy. But I'm not sure that I would trust people that are not from here, or many people from here. And that's sort of the challenge. So if you're going to do the citizen assembly, it'd be helpful for you to show us what an independent expert and guide looks like, because that will certainly change how this body, this mini public might vote, right? Yeah. And then my actual question, to get to that, is who will be your mayoral aide? If you have, a short list, that'd be great to know. And will you institute 360 reviews or some sort of a performance review plan for the department heads and all of the employees of Hudson? This has been foiled by other residents, and to the best of our knowledge, it seems that only the police department has regular reviews, and only the police department carries, cameras by law. And it seems that most of the problems are not in the police department; it's more in the mayor's office and other offices. So should we give everyone a camera like the police, or can we do performance reviews? How would the executive of the city of Hudson solve that next year?
Yeah, I would definitely consider that. I wasn't aware of that about the police department, that they have those kinds of those things in place. But yeah, I definitely would. I would consider the last suggestion, certainly.
So not cameras would be released.
Yeah, not cameras. I'm not. No. Performance reviews, absolutely. And I feel like that's something that could probably be part of a conversation in the city charter, in a charter review, where those kinds of issues could be raised. Your point about the difference between a jury duty and a citizens' assembly is really good, and I really appreciate it. Because the citizens' assembly, it's not one person facilitating it; it's facilitated by a bunch of people or by a team. And then that assembly is educated by a whole bunch of other people. So it's quite an education experience and a facilitated experience too. I think I might have missed the middle question.
Well, and Peter, if I may just to add to that, then ask the singular narrow question. In the successful European citizen assemblies, they made the curriculum and the notes public ahead of time. And this is a very big deal, right? So the entire nation of Ireland could sort of see what information and statistics was provided to the 40 people per town or whatever. And if you move forward with this, I would really recommend that, because we live in this age of untruth and just crazy divided time. So if you guys made public what the shared facts are, and even have the guides be selected or moderated somehow for being, as much as one can, be non-partisan, I think that would go a really long way to building more trust in the process.
Yeah.
But Peter, one thing that not for now, there's not enough time, but there's been less than 10 of these in America a year, and you are not the CEO of Citizen Assembly, so I don't want to put you on the spot to defend the whole practice. But separately later, I would love for you to write or do a video on if it is such a good idea, which I think it is, not necessarily for Hudson, but as an innovation. Why has there only been 10 a year in America? I mean, they've been more popular in Europe, but no. Please answer that at some point to do some research. I'm sure there's a good reason. But my question, mayor aide, who's going to be your mayoral aide, since that person is going to be very important?
Oh, I have no idea.
How will you take job applications? Will you look at justice?
I really don't know, Hugo. I mean, I feel like I would follow standard operating procedure. You know what I mean? I feel like it's important that I would have an administrative assistant. I think that that person should be able to communicate very well. Beyond that, I don't know. And I think your skepticism about citizens' assembly is fine. Yeah, I mean, I have a proposal from 3 of the leading organizations in deliberative democracy in the United States. It's a growing field. I think we're at the beginning of something really amazing and really special. And the proposal that I have includes independent advisories, third party. It's the whole thing is about how do we operate as a local government in the middle of an institutional trust crisis, when we don't trust anybody, we don't trust institutions, we don't trust people that we live near. And so every process has to be legitimate. And I think that's the primary reason deliberative democracy is showing up, because people want to trust what they're doing. And so my proposal is 100% there for that.
And just on a compliment, Peter, as far as we could tell, you have been in touch with or speak with the best people in the country about, to be clear, folklore. We've done a lot of research and almost all of the...
Who's we? Can you identify who we is?
We, the editors of Hudson Common Sense. And actually one of the folks at Stanford that you reference a lot that I've been communicating with. So that's great. You are in touch with the people that know the best how to do this, and that's a great thing. The question that the electorate has to ask is, do we want to do this? Doesn't make sense for Hudson, right? But thanks for being in touch with the best people and driving a cool new idea.
Thank you. Any other questions from anybody?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you see any role of the mayor and the hospital?
Yeah, I mean, so the idea of growth in the city of Hudson, the idea of having a vision for economic development, and the adversarial nature that the mayor's office has now with the economic driver, I think about I'm going to get to the question. So I feel like we have these established economies of tourism and hospitality, arts and culture, and the hospital. These are these real engines of economic activity in the city of Hudson that we really need to sort of nurture and make sure that we're supporting in very meaningful ways. And so trying to figure out how to make the hospital work here is part of that. I don't have a ton of experience in understanding like what's happening there, but I would want very much to sort of make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep them here and to make sure that they're, that they stay. And so that's the established economies, and then my economic development framework tries to identify some emerging economies or industries to really aggressively bring businesses here, to make Hudson a place that they want to come, that they want to start a business, create jobs, to become, to broaden the economy beyond tourism and hospitality. And then there's one detail here I want to add, which is, I think, connected to, but somebody once said that Hudson is what's called a NORC. Have you ever heard of this? So NORC is an acronym for Naturally Occurring Retirement Community. I do not want Hudson to become a naturally occurring retirement community, right? And so that means we need to have we have to set very, very strong intentions to bring different types of jobs here. We have to make it our job to bring families here, to bring young people here, to avoid what I think it would be a waste of a beautiful opportunity in Hudson.
I think, education and healthcare play very strongly in that vision.
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting too. They talk about the prison the prison, which they always talk about closing. We could actually have a school. We could have a school here.
Yeah.
And that would be a great thing. Tanya.
So part comment, part related to the tax situation, but also I believe the biggest issue with the hospital is housing. And everyone approaches housing here like, oh, we have to start with affordable first, which I think is completely backwards. You actually have to start with expensive housing that pays taxes, like me, so that you can afford to build less expensive housing. But with a really simple zoning change, allowing ADUs on alleys here, you could completely change the amount of housing that's available, like almost overnight. If I had an ADU that was at an affordable rate, making money, I couldn't afford to build it, so it'd have to be subsidized by the city on some level, like, a loan from the city. I build the ADU, boom, there's housing. Of course I would take that opportunity. And how many people wouldn't? Because it would allow them to stay in a place that they love. It is a NORC because of the walkability factor. I personally know several people that are moving here just because of the walkability, because of the train. And again, I want to make another comment about the tax situation, because it's disproportionately affecting, obviously, property owners, but it's not a property owner issue. It's an everyone issue. If my taxes go up, my rent goes up. The person who's my tenant has to be a more expensive tenant. They have to sell $500 socks or whatever it is to make their rents in this city. And if we want the cool old places, or we want the diner, or we want Cascades to stay, or whatever it is, it's not going to happen if the tax burden gets shifted when a building changes hands, because it's going to price out the next tenant, and then you're going to end up with what I had in the city I came from. I came here from Sag Harbor. I was there for 20 years, and I watched it turn into what everyone here complains about, the Hamptons that's full of like a wealthy playground, and all of our street level shops were real estate offices, no offense to Paul. But it was like, nobody wants a streetscape of real estate offices, but they're the ones that can afford to pay the rent, and that's why they get to be tenants when other people don't. So
I have to share my office to pay my rent.
I know. There you go.
I don't know if you were here, Tanya, she was talking about, I hadn't really thought about that the city has an ordinance or something to eliminate chain stores if you have more than 4. But somehow the national real estate companies somehow slipped through we just let them do it. And that's I hadn't really considered that. That's crazy.
Enforceable all the time.
No.
Like a sidewalk law.
Yeah.
It's not gonna fly here.
And why can't you zone it for real estate offices to be on the second floor? Nobody needs them on the ground floor. Nobody.
I think your ADU thing is a
Oh,
great
yeah.
idea, and and you're right that you need help to do that, because the sort of elephant in the room now is what construction costs are now, which are beyond the pale.
And the city, the city has an ADU program that's kind of coming in, and the work I'm doing with Mark to visualize is going to try to is focused on infill, what they call infill, gentle density ADU stuff, and that's part of the reason is to sort of visualize what these things are, so that we can demonstrate that there's ways of bringing density, increasing population in a way that isn't what we've been shown. What we've been shown is that you need these massive retrograde developments in order, like that's what housing is meant to be. And I think the development proposals that we've had in Hudson have been so bad that they just end up dividing us, and it just makes everything worse. And we really need creativity really desperately to solve these problems.
It's interesting because before you came here, the pocket park that is, on Warren Street, the lovely one where Mel's is down at the bottom. So this was a man, David Deutsch, and he was going to develop the whole area down there. And one of the plans was to have like a carpentry guild and an electric guild, and so people could learn the trade. And one idea might be that we could create those guilds, and those guilds could build the ADUs.
Yeah.
And they would be being trained, as well as residents would have a way to offset their taxes, and we'd have new places for people to live.
Yeah, there's also ways where you can create templates where it's sort of plug and play, and you actually produce the funding and the financing, and so it all fits in. Oh, Lloyd. Oh, sorry. Can I get Kaya first? Kaya, I didn't see your hand.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Up by the 7th Street firehouse, there's a brand new building, and then they're turning the old warehouse into a hotel, I think. Have they put the cart before the horse, in the sense of where all the car is gonna go? Like the parking and the driving? And then my second question is that for how easy would it be to do crosswalks? Because I'm thinking where the current library is, 5th and State, and also I was technically knocked over by a moving car on State and 6th. So from my perspective, I think State is one of the scariest streets on the planet.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, certainly crosswalks. We need crosswalks. Yeah, we need to invest in making the streets and the intersections safer. I talked to one. There's also the possibility of even just painting lines on State Street might make it safer. It's a pretty broad street, so people drive pretty fast, and they feel unregulated. To your point about the cart before the horse, I know they're in conversations to try to have to increase parking. I'm not going to explain the space very well. So we need more parking. We need parking permits for residents first. I know the Pocketbook Factory is in conversation with the city and with Galvan to try to use the land over there to share sort of parking resources. And yes, I think, is that a full answer, Kaya?
Yeah, again, it's you end up as someone who is only a walker, who is a handicapped person, the chaos of more cars, because again, from my perspective, not wearing my Zastra as a social work hat, that building is 5 stories, right? It's against what I thought was protocol for Hudson. thought Hudson was only supposed to be 4.
Exactly, you're so right.
And I personally moved here 12 years ago because we weren't a Brooklyn, right? We weren't bigger. So it's, and again, I realize to survive, we need more people.
Yeah.
And in this day and age, a lot of people work from home. So it you know, it wouldn't work for someone who's, you know, in their 20s with kids. So, but, and again, you know, I'm just one woman trying to survive. But it's, you know, it's, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it works, right? How, I mean, and truthfully, meaning knocked over by a car just means that the person wasn't paying attention, you know, because he was stopped at a stop sign and he started driving before I cleared the car.
But without question, the city needs to do more to design the intersections to, you know, to keep all of us safe. There's no question about that. Yeah.
I realize there's a lot of intersection problems and problems like the ones you're discussing, but to me, it seems like the most common sense and inexpensive, easy, is to just make it no turn on red anywhere in the city limits.
That's
Yeah.
a good idea.
Yeah.
Solves so many problems so cheaply.
Yes. I don't disagree with you at all. Do you know the history of that law?
No, I don't.
It was actually came out of the 70s. It was to avoid the problem that it was solving was idling cars. The exhaust from a car stopped at a red light. They wanted to encourage it to keep moving. But what it does is it sends cars and people into the same space at the same time, which is bonkers. So yeah, I
I
agree.
live right down near 3rd Street, and people don't even stop to see if someone's coming. They'll roll right through a red light.
That's right. Yeah, and
Barely even slowing down.
that's right. And the crosswalk isn't even.
And
They go
you
right into it.
cannot see them.
No, it's horrible.
You know, another obvious solution to this parking thing is if we had a really great electric bus loop that just went all day. I would jump on that bus all the time. I would never drive my car.
That would be great.
And that seems something that that we should be able to get a grant for.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that would take care of a lot of people.
Dermot.
Hi, how you doing? Just wondering, is there a reason why there aren't any lane delineation paint lines on any streets? And like why there's no stop sign on this corner? I mean, maybe there's like a trucking issue, it seems, because there's a lot of trucks here, and I know that's part of a bigger topic. But there's so many people on this corner in particular that seem like at risk of getting hit by a car all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's no traffic lane delineations.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right, right here, right, yeah.
I don't think so. I mean, I think more it's probably funding and a lack of. There's probably no good reason, honestly. Yeah, in terms of the striping, and then the stop sign and how that happens. This is the planning gap. This is what I talk about with the planning gap: is that there's nobody whose job it is to gather the information and to make these kinds of decisions happen. It used to be the police commissioner. You would tell the police commissioner that you wanted a stop sign, and he would go look and then make an observation, and then you would get a stop sign. So yeah, there's no. It doesn't sound like an answer, but it is an answer. Yeah, Tanya?
Maybe this is a planning gap question, but is there a reason that Hudson seems to have a disproportionate number of county buildings, and is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the existential thing, that we're the county seat. So this is part of our existential challenge, that we are 2 square miles with 40 to 50% of our land untaxed. And the reason that almost half of our land is untaxed is that we are the host for all the county's social services and all the not-for-profits that serve that population, which means that we're running on half revenue. And that's why the relationship with the county is so important and so tense. I mean, this is another opportunity as a mayor to try to figure out a way to bring that relationship into a better place, both between the city and Greenport, and then the city and the county. I remember meeting with a woman who's a wonderful person, Ann Cooper, who does Columbia County tourism, and they do tons of surveys about Columbia County tourism, and I asked her what she had learned, or what data they had about Hudson, and she basically said they don't even really measure Hudson. You know what I mean? They're really not, they're not, it's not what they do. You know, they're interested in the county. And that relationship is at the center of a lot of our conflicts, quite honestly. And so we need to find a way there too to collaborate and partner in ways, because what's good for us is good for them, you know. And to be contentious around some of these issues is not good for anybody. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one thing I want to say is that in that rezoning task force that I was a part of, I was the voice of, can't we mandate certain, you know, materials? And the answer was, oh, you can't legislate taste. It turned out that initially there was a lot of building where they ended up using like spray styrofoam on the outer walls as insulation, and it would go, you know, all over the place when they installed it. It was just terrible. But I think that maybe something to think about is incentives as opposed to, you know, consequences, but
Yeah.
that if people meet certain kind of environmental or material benchmarks, they can have some benefit. That's one thing. And there seems to be this huge parking lot by the county offices down there that's underused in terms of there being a parking shortage. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit of a parking thing is a little strange, because I've had people like planners, Kaya, when we did the shared streets thing, you know, that we had parking studies, and you can look at a map and look at the capacity and stuff like that, and you can really look and do the math and say, you know what, you actually have the capacity. But the lived experience of having to walk, the difference between having a parking space in front of you versus having to walk a block to a parking space is a problem. You know what I mean? So it's all very subjective.
I take that bus to the shopping mall that does that circle, and my friends who have lived here for over 20 years have never been on that bus.
Yeah, it's relatively new, and it's a credit to Michael Chimides, the county supervisor, who's really, I think, almost single-handedly really made that happen. I want to respect everybody's time, and I want to make good on the promise to have like a town hall kind of moment. So maybe I'll just thank you all for coming, and if anybody has maybe the question will be, if you were mayor, what would you do? If anybody wants to just sort of stand up and share your idea, except for you, Lloyd.
Thank you.
So, I said that with a lot of love. You know that, right?
I love you too. I appreciate beauty, and I'm allowing love to
I know of all the people I know that you believe you appreciate beauty, Lloyd. Yeah, so if you want to, if anybody, so I was going to make a space for the room. If anybody wants to just sort of make a statement, nobody has to ask a question, nobody has to respond. Tanya, if you were mayor, what would you do?
A lot of things. I actually would make Warren Street pedestrian only. I would change the zoning for ADUs immediately. I would find ways for the city to almost be the bank for people who want to develop here. So that would also support the ADU growth. I would build a couple of very large apartment buildings. Forget about style, but large for the hospital. I would encourage a major teaching hospital to come here. Stanford, Columbia, you pick it. Major, because I know so many people here who go to the city for all of their medical needs. That doesn't have to happen. I mean, come on, people are spending $250 just to go see doctors because they're better in the city. They could be better here. I've completely changed the way the waterfront is used. I grew up in San Francisco, a place that knows how to use its waterfront. I would be building larger scale apartment, well, multi-use buildings, so restaurant, commercial on the ground floor, residential in the middle, and maybe hotel at the top, call it the wedding venue as well. It's on the Hudson River. I would actually create a prototype that could be repeated at every major city along the Hudson River, so that people would start to think about boat traffic as things like ferries that go to Athens there, ferries that go to Rhinebeck. Make it an excursion, make it an event, make it a pilgrimage for people to, like, let Hudson be a prototype city that the other cities in the Hudson Valley want to be. So I would be using all of the history that we have, and I would be adding the 21st century dimension to it, which is how can, like, I completely agree with you that growing this place to 10,000 people is essential. I came here thinking it was 10,000 people. I don't know why I got it wrong. I guess it used to be 10, and now it's 5.
Yeah.
I would change that, but I wouldn't change it in the heart and the center. I'd change it like Paris does. I'd change it on the edges. I would build larger units. I mean, I'm not against the Hudson Depot. I think more of those on the fringes make sense. But I feel like zoning is the quickest, easiest thing to ask. And I would get rid of a lot of the Columbia County buildings, or not get rid of, but maybe Green Fork can have some, or maybe they go in the fringes too, because they're taking up really great real estate. And I would expand the walkability of this place. Like Nicole said, 100%, there should be a trolley or a bus or something. Make it cute, make it cable car, I don't care. But make it something people want to use to go up and down the street more easily, so that parking can be, and also I would change all of our parking spaces into multi-tiered units. I'd be putting parks on top of them. I would be thinking about solar as well, as like maybe solar on the roof a little bit, but solar as a shade structure for the park, and then parking below in like maybe 2 stories. Double your parking, create a park, all good.
Thank you. Anybody else? If you were mayor, what would you do? Or any other issue? Ron?
I'm just going to pick out one item that we haven't touched on, and that's the Hudson Public Schools. And if you're going to aspire for this to be a great place for young people to grow up, so the first thing I would not do as mayor is try to take over the schools. That's not so much fun for a lot of mayors who have tried. But I think a dynamic relationship using the bully pulpit of the mayor's office to inspire innovation, change, progressive thinking, look at the new ways that public schools are transitioning into new ways of engaging youth and educating youth. We can build the greatest city in the world, but if the schools are mediocre, that's more than just a speed bump. And so, and while we were talking about taxes also, I mean, it's not a small matter when we look at our school taxes. And so what are we as citizens, what's the reward we're getting for that sizable tax payment? So I would hope that the mayor would have, as mayor, I think I would want somebody in my administration who is a link to the school district, so that there's a human infrastructure connecting the city and the schools. Shared vision about how the city and the schools can work together in certain kinds of ways. I mean, I admire and respect the notion that if you build for children, that everything else can fall in place. But I think the public school issue has got to be a part of that conversation.
Thank you very much.
I think it'd be great, right? Yeah, if you had the mayor's office, the Hudson Youth, and the school all working together, all in communication with each other.
Yeah.
So I think something that maybe ties in with that, and something that you were mentioning before about guilds and trades, and my daughter happens to be a teacher in Capital BOCES, like trade school, and one of the things she's found is that, you know, in a world where a lot of kids are struggling with concentration, with like being in school, she, you know, teaches English to kids who are studying trades. And even though they're not the kind of, you know, students that, you know, you think teachers want to teach, she's like, in their own way, they're really motivated because they have something that they're trying to get to, which is a job. And in an environment where a lot of jobs we thought were going to be secure are being, you know, phased out. Trades are something that is probably really reliable because they're hands and you need people to do these things. And so, you know, if there were a way to work in our school system, a really strong, you know, trade focus alongside, you know, guilds of trade people who could build up the city, you know, and as a sort of creative person who's sort of been running from rising rents my entire life, and still I'm about to get priced out of Hudson as well. You know, it'd be nice to be somewhere that sort of honored us and didn't say, well, thanks for the gentrification, see you later. You know, because everywhere I've ever lived, you know, I was, you know, the pioneer or something, and I've just been fleeing on and on and on and on. And like I said, I'm about to flee again because my next rent increase will price me out of Hudson.
I share your history, and I'm thinking, where's the next? But it's not as easy as it used to be.
But I think there should be, you know, there should be a creative way to sort of tie a bunch of strengths together and make it, you know, not necessarily focus first on the tourist destination side of things and more on what makes a great place to live.
I'd like to piggyback on that if I could, Peter, and just say, you paint a picture of a Newark as being a negative thing. Manhattan is full of Newarks. I mean, you don't have to cross the street and get groceries and drugstore, and so the idea of a Newark it's not mutually exclusive. You can also have a rich cultural community. You can also have a young, active youth and activities. But attracting is a certain kind. Well, Amy and I are sort of Newarkish. You know, we've just moved from Manhattan, and we have expendable income, and we have time. That's an asset for Hudson. It's a part of a rich mixture of different kinds of experiences that can be available. So I would just like to put a footnote that Newark might also tie into affordable housing, and that maintaining affordable housing is also a way we keep a diversified, rich, active community. We're not pushing people out. We're intentionally designing an economy that allows for a mix of economic circumstances rather than just the weekenders or the exclusively affluent.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Oh, I appreciate that. Go ahead.
I live in my properties in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and I mean, I'm aged out. I feel I'm grandma when I walk down the street because the focus has been so completely on developing youth culture. I think that if you want diversity, you know, Newark kind of has this idea like it's a 55 and over community. Of course, that's not what you're speaking to, but as part of being diverse, I think it should be attractive to people that there's a hospital, as you point out, and it's a good place to, you know, to start bringing people that have disposable income, perhaps, that can pay higher taxes, whatever. Also, to the guild thing, I mean, youth employment, summer jobs, there's, you know, the mayor's office in New York, like, does that, and they could be part of the building the ADUs if we're going to be idealistic.
Yeah. I want to speak to the Newark thing. I didn't mean to be as trash talky about Newark. But I remember, I guess it was coming from a place I've been in conversations with people. Well, I'm a new father in Hudson, and I've been told, you know, I've had people say this isn't a place for families. We're not a city for families. By people who you think would know better, you know what I mean? And I remember feeling like so that's where that was coming from. And I feel like the way you describe it, Newark, I'm there for the walkable. This is the thing I think that Hudson is so beautiful, that we have this grid, and it's just such a beautiful little city that everybody would want to live in. But it also, the schools are something that historically nobody really wants to talk about, and the relationship is broken. I'm having meetings with as many people as I can on the board and involved in the schools. because that relationship needs work. And I don't know this, it's just we haven't really addressed it meaningfully, and we have an opportunity to, and an obligation to, because we're not gonna get the jobs we want if the schools if it keeps going the way it's going. And I have a lot of compassion for people who have great experiences at the school. They're not communicating the value very well. It's not as bad as we think it is, but there's work that needs to be done.
I have one last question. Is it possible that you all could organize a debate with the four of you before the election?
Yeah, you might get 4 debates depending on who's in charge. I talked to Joe. Joe has an idea for a bunch of debates. It's in the works. So certainly there will be at least one, I'm sure. Does anybody? Lloyd?
So just to be respectful of this format, and I so appreciate you gathering everyone together, and the input is very valuable. I really deeply appreciate it, and not to express any aspirations for any political office, and I'm not going to use that format, but I would like to fill in a couple of things.
You can be, Lloyd, you can say whatever you'd like to say.
The ADUs are, I think, currently before the Common Council. So kind of I think we're single family in the back, or they could be attached. So that, I believe that's something that's happening now before the Common Council. The parking on 4th and Columbia, that's county. So that's county building. Now personally, Leveling Warren, I don't know why the county jammed 3 departments in there and then needed more parking spaces. Then they needed more parking spaces than was in that lot, right? Personally, the Pocketbook Factory, this one on 74th Street, so the Pocketbook Factory already has a deal where they're going to use some of that land behind that old garage, that repair business. That's already kind of like been agreed to. But I don't also like the idea of that intersection. Now, people walking across the street on 6th Street there, I actually think, and this is all by afterthought, but in principle, I think we're going to do a new development or a new revamping of everything. There should be sufficient parking. And this was changed back, I believe, 2019 or something for the restaurants. But if you're doing a new development, the parking is an issue. Totally the parking is an issue. And I don't think the way it's being handled now is not comprehensive. You have all different plans, coming in all different parking studies that don't take into account that there's another project right next door that's like trying to take the same parking as part of their parking studies, if that makes any sense. All right, now I'll finish on this last thing. The tax assessment's a problem, right? Because if you have people that have been here for 30 years, paid 28 grand for their property, they're older. I'm sorry, I'm glad you didn't say narc, but Nork, But so I'm a Nork. I'm retired. Retired early on Social Security. I worked my whole life. So it was like, oh, the tax is BS. The tax assessment. I mean, you got people that are not selling their properties, and their taxes are being raised. It's being priced out.
Yeah.
And that's all because like maybe 3, 4, 5% of the population are inflating everybody's property values. And if you're not realizing profits from selling your property, what do you got to move out in order to pay the taxes? This is what. Who was the one on Allen Street? Was that you?
I'm on Allen.
That was you. With your neighbor, 750,000. They sold 500. That's ridiculous. That was so ridiculous. So that's a problem, and I don't know the answer to that, but it's something that needs to be addressed. So I threw a lot out there. What do you got against Norks?
Why do I have against Norks? I think our economic future depends on our ability to bring families here and have jobs and to have a vibrant community that's more than just a tourism and a tourism destination. That's my issue. I think we need a broader economy, and that's it.
Ask the retired people don't stand in the way of that.
What's that?
I said retired people don't stand in the way of your jobs and stuff.
Yeah, I didn't mean to. I didn't.
It's valid. It's valid.
All right. No. All right. Well, Nicole, I want to thank you so much for accepting my invitation into this. I really appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Peter. I've really enjoyed it.
And thank you guys for coming. I really appreciate you showing up very much. All right.
Thank you.